Okay, so I'm here with Andy Pitcher.
It's true.
We're at the Guitar Summit in Chicago, 2025. It's a wonderful event, and he started off with a really cool improv, and I feel like the use of effects that you have is pretty unique. Definitely, I would say from what I've seen, DL4 is kind of like a main staple to your workflow and improvisational sound. Do you want to talk more about why you love that piece of gear so much?
Yeah, I think the DL4 is uniquely an instrument in and of itself, so you could take like before, you're trying out the guitar and like I could just use the pedal and grab snippets of that and then re-trigger it and redirection it. And once you learn it well enough, like an instrument, while I'm improvising, I might play a G on the low E here and think I want one an octave below. So I know, okay, I'll set it up to record and then put it in halftime, and then I have that bed. And then, I want like kind of a bird sound. So I could do a trill while I'm halftime. And when I put it back to normal speed, then you have this trill up top. That's sort of like, okay, it's this little bird flying by. And it's just really inspirational in that it does exactly what you ask when you ask it, much in the way a string does, much in the way a guitar as a whole does. And yeah, I was just lucky to find it young. Dave from Minus the Bear, I saw his rig run down or something and was just like, oh, interesting, that's cool. And I was probably 16 or something. And I had a Boss DD7 delay that I'd saved up for like 8 months to get. And I had the tap tempo for it, and it had a looper on it, and it was kind of rugged, and you could change the speed of it. And so I was getting familiar with like, change the speed, it changes the pitch. These kinds of things are related, much like records or tape that I was listening to music on. And then I found someone on Craigslist who was willing to trade me the DD7 with the tap for the DL4.
Cool. And
I went home that day and I just found a new world. It was amazing.
So it's pretty immediate.
Yeah. I was thinking like, well, this one's easier to play in time. And so at the time I was practicing a lot, for like hours a day. And so I was like, I could play like, a rhythm part and then practice soloing over it, something like this. And quickly I was like, it does this. It does this. It does this. And as someone who was deeply into, kind of odd music from the start, like my favorite band, every year of high school, my photo was in a Primus t-shirt. It just was like, I just like weird shit. So the DL4 was just a miracle when it was there, and it was the kind of thing that I'm grateful I had at home. I never got to try it in a store. It just was, okay, now it's here. I kind of have like my first moments with it are totally private, and I could be messy and bad at it until I like get the wheels going.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I want to know just a little bit more about you personally. What would somebody have to know, Andy, to understand the person you are today?
I mean, yeah, life, when you meet someone, I think folks can be a lot more, I think a lot of people could spare a lot of strangers' patience because there's a lot of context in their whole life, that gets them to there. And I definitely have a lot of context of why I feel the way I do or think the way I do about things. But it's a lot of sad stuff, which I'm fine with exploring, but also maybe what's easier is that this thing is like my closest living relationship, is kind of like the private space I share with my instrument. And so it's sometimes easier for me to show sounds as thoughts than just talk about it,
Yeah, no, that's true. You dedicated your album Dot, which is your debut solo album, to your mother and father.
Yeah.
What influence did they have on your life?
Yeah, I was lucky to have really good parents until about the age of 10. And I was also lucky that I had figured out enough things by 10 to kind of raise myself the rest of the way. My father was a guitarist, and he was kind of a folk singer. And I've digitized the music and put it online. His name is Russell Pitcher.
Cool.
And he was a plumber by trade. You know, I learned a lot about work ethic, you know, and focus from that, and kind of the humbleness that comes with doing essential work that is, you know, you don't notice unless there's a problem in plumbing, you know. It's rare that you turn on, I think most people, rare you turn on your sink and you're like, well, thank goodness it worked again, you know?
Yeah.
And in that, you know, also the balance with creativity. And so my father would come home and he would build motorcycles, and he had a 36 knucklehead. That was kind of his main bike. And he had the engine on his arm, and, you know, he had hair like down to his ass, you know, big ponytail. I mean, just, he was a, you know, fun guy, fun dad. And he played guitar, and he really loved a lot of music, but mostly folk music and the Beatles and Black Sabbath. And in the front seat of his work truck, if I was lucky to go to a job site with him when I was a kid, he had this box of pipe fittings that had been folded in, the top of it, and it was replaced eventually with cassettes, and it stuck right between the two front seats, so I could just always go back to this library, and didn't know what I'd pull out, and I'd pull out stuff that, you know, I was young enough, it frightened me, like Primus's Pork Soda has like this, you know, it's claymation pig on the front. It scared the fuck out of me. I mean, I really was like, and then, you know, Sabbath's Paranoid, or We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll, and slowly I discovered this world of, you know, as I was learning how to talk, as I was learning how to interact with the world, and, you know, as a very inquisitive child, I was asking, you know, questions, and I was lucky I had someone there who had answers for me. So at the same time, I'm like, you know, why are some of the, you know, we're in the truck, why are some of the stripes in the road dots, and why are some solid lines, you know? Oh, that means you can cross over. Oh, okay. What is this song Hands of Doom about? Oh, it's about, you know, there's things called drugs, and it's really bad, and you shouldn't do, you know. And as much as anything else, I was just learning about this history of these bands that I was really obsessed with from like 4 years old.
Yeah.
And he showed me how to play Iron Man on one string in a different key, just following the dots. And like, so I don't remember a time of learning how to, not how to play, but how to literally like strike your first note. I don't remember that. That's been with me as long as I knew how to walk. Mm-hmm. To that, like, you fret here and you pick at the same time that you move your hand. Beyond that, it took another, you know, it took till I was like 13 to somewhere between 10, 12, 13, 14 to like start to play the guitar. But yeah, I mean, it just gave me this music. And when he died of a brain aneurysm when I was 10. So I just went to bed one night. I woke up one day and that was it. My world was different. And in a lot of ways, you know, my mom really struggled after that. And now the way I think of it is she kind of went with him in a way. The mother I knew growing up, but she encouraged me to play the guitar as a means of connecting with him posthumously. He died in September, and that Christmas, he had already picked out a guitar for me, and it was this no branding Martin copy that he probably found on a job site. He'd often trade service for, oh, hey, I was in your crawl space, how about $100 off? I take this like broken old mandolin. Yeah, sure. So
he planned on giving you that for Christmas?
Yeah, it was already, you know, so it was like the last gift he gave me, you know, and on top of a lifetime of, you know, gifts of conversation and knowledge. And it took a little bit for me to start playing it, but I was instantly obsessed with it. And being the child of someone who was tinkering all the time in the garage, working on stuff, I was always working with little things with my hands. And so before I could really play that well, I was trying to build electronics, you know, like a kill switch or things. And I would just go on forums and get the Sweetwater magazine and flip through it and, you know, see maybe there's like a fuzz face, and it's like, oh, this is germanium, you know, what the fuck's germanium? So I'd look that up and try to find this information. And slowly I learned kind of at the same time as I was learning to play the guitar. And honestly, for a long time, I cared more about the mechanics of it. I was more interested in maybe building guitars or something. And it wasn't until I was 16 or so that I realized I was not too interested in a normal life, and probably wouldn't, I deal a lot with depression, and it's like, I don't really want to stick around. And, but maybe if I really take this guitar thing seriously, I could figure out something, through it. And so that's when I figured out how to practice, and that became obsessive. And so I owe my father kind of music, and I owe my mother just enough support to pursue it. She didn't always understand it, and as her life went on post my father's passing, it got more and more troubled, and that led to her death. But she was supportive as she could be of the instrument, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. I relate to what you're talking about as far as depression and finding kind of solace through music.
Yeah.
Like, has that been a consistent kind of bedrock in your life as far as just navigating through the difficulties emotionally or otherwise?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, for me, a lot of the soundscape stuff, the way I play, and I consider my posture as I age, I kind of fold over the guitar, but a lot of the time I'm trying to find something of a private space, with the instrument that I can go back to. And I'm always excited when people tell me they play, because whether or not it's like, a lot of people be like, well, yeah, I don't really play. They're like, well, I don't, because I don't play gigs, but I play at home. Like, that's,
yeah.
I care more about someone playing at home than playing shows. Like, whether or not I ever, got a smartphone and started using the internet and playing guitar on the internet, like, this is what I was doing forever. I'm just so fortunate now that some people pay attention to it, but it'd be happening either way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I share your love for guitar pedals, if you could, they just like change the effect of the guitar or whatever instrument you're playing. I guess if you could swap minds and muscle memory with any musician or artist, what would that be? Kind of like turning on the effect of a guitar pedal, just changing your playing style.
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I've strived to pull influence in from folks I really adore, and I can, fake, oh, it's sort of an Aphex Twin thing, or like, oh, it's sort of a, there's a little bit of like Coltrane in that like wall of sound thing, or like, Tony Iommi. But people like Pat Metheny or like John McLaughlin just changed my life, and their abilities are still physically beyond mine. So there's some like Still Life Talking, maybe the Pat Metheny group record. There's this like he just like ends up in these runs where he's string skipping and he's like arpeggiating and he's playing these voicings from like the inside out. As much as I kind of do that in slow-mo, it would be amazing to hit a pedal and kind of have that turn on for a run and then go back to the ambient space.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Yeah. So like talking about the production of your album Dot, I've listened to it several times at least, and it's got a really nice flow to it. It starts off with an exciting guitar, and we talked before rolling the cameras. You were saying that was in one take. It sounded like it, and I asked, and what are your listening habits while you create, whether writing or recording music, like specifically for this album Dot? Did you change them at all? And if so, how?
That's a great question. I had, for a long time, as somebody who identifies, actually going back to that time when I got the DL4 and I started soloing over stuff, I really could not like guitar solo. I was much more like a kind of Sabbath, kind of Tool, Alice in Chains, like rock guitarist at this time. In high school, I had a band called Hangman that was like kind of like those bands. It was like it was like progressive rock, metal. wasn't, it's not quite like, it wasn't Between the Buried and Me, like progressive metal, but it wasn't like progressive rock, like Rush. It was somewhere like, drop D. And I could not solo for the life of me, but I could write riffs. So I was like, let me get better at this like soloing thing. So I started practicing. And a year or two later, I sounded like I practiced a lot. I didn't sound like a musician anymore. I stopped making music. I just could play scales. So then to break myself out of that, I was like, okay, well, I'll play that much, but I'm going to start to just improvise to try to get better at this like soloing thing. And that's led me to here. And part of that was not putting more value in the next thing I play than as the last thing I play or the thing I'll play 2 days later. And so I stopped in that way writing because everything was written in real time and then let go. And my listening habits would then add to that. So if I'm listening to more electronic music, I might hear it in my improvisation because it's what I'm absorbing. If I'm listening to more metal at the time, I might hear that, if I'm listening to more like free improvisation or like free jazz or something, I'll hear that things will get hairier, that there'll be a little more gain, things like this. And so in realizing that I had to make this record, my father had made an album, a tape that kind of was passed around the family. And when he had died, having this living relic was incredible because you could develop your own relationship with this music. And so for me, I was like, well, before I turn 30, I have to capture this thing I do because it's going to change with time. It, for the first time, feels unique enough, and I'm developing tendonitis. So I might lose it. So I just want to like grab a snapshot while I can. And so my focus started going through all these things I had throughout my life and these things I remembered, like that first tune, All's Life, I wrote when I was 15 and it was much slower then, but it like, okay, I always liked that melody. Let's take that and let's do this. And I collected this little pile of seeds and I figured out the shape of the record and with this emotional pacing of what my life had been up till then, starting from a really excited kid who's diagnosed with ADHD and kind of struggled with that, but there was a lot of joy in it, to like this kind of confusing, murky life post my father, to trying to find some joy again, and then finding this space with the instrument, and all the way down to, the last tune's kind of about my mom passing. I focused in on these things, and I might have had 4 chords, but I knew that this tune was going to come out of those 4 chords. So like the third tune, Cloud Clutter, came from a demo I made on YouTube for the Old Blood Noise Sunlight. Yeah. And so I went back and I took that and I rewrote this thing, and I knew where I wanted it to end emotionally. I knew what it wanted to feel like. And so my listening went from everything all the time, or, obsessing about something like, there was like 2018, I basically only listened to TLC and Electric Miles for a year. I mean, it was just odd. And I focused into what are things that make me feel the way I want this to feel, or what makes me feel the same way that this melody already makes me feel, but it's only, 30 seconds of music that I've written. So I started listening all the time to my demos I had made, because I recorded the record twice, once on my own and once at a studio.
Did you plan to do that?
Yeah, I wanted to have
a rough sketch.
Yeah, and be able to go in and just knock it out. And I reused a lot of material from it, be it on with strings. There's all this string noise. Yeah, that's actually not from the performance.
It's from the first rough track.
Yeah, on the rough track on the demo, I had used a noise remover. And when you're doing audio production, there's this thing called the delta, which is like what you're removing. So you could listen to just the frequencies you're removing to make sure that it's what you want. So I recorded out of a plugin the delta of this noise removal stuff, and so it's only the finger noise. And I added that artificially on top of the more polished guitar, because I like those little details that sounded like breath. You hear singer, right? Yeah. So I added that kind of stuff in, say these little things. But honestly, in making Dot, I listened to Dot a lot, because like All's Life was 4 minutes originally, and it just was overcomplicated. It was too much. And then, you know, certain things were longer, certain things were shorter. And then I listened to other music that reminded me of what I was trying to get at. So like, you know, this tune reminds me of Square Pusher. I'm going to listen to a lot of Square Pusher. This tune reminds me of like DJ Zinc. Okay, I'm going to listen to DJ Zinc. Here's Metheny. Here's this. Here's Aphex Twin.
You talk about, I love, you know, on your Instagram post announcing the album, the release, I think that's what it was. You talk about how you use the studio as an instrument and did all these crazy experimental recording techniques, like having 14 different mics on an acoustic or like acoustic guitar that you mixed in ways that made effects in and of itself. You even had like a piezo pickup on your rib to pick up like the different sounds of the acoustic body. There's two questions, I guess, you know, with all that experimentation, what idea didn't land as good as you thought it would? And what I guess surprised you with how well it worked?
The rib mic was less dramatic than I had hoped. Did you
have a shirt on, or were you bare chest?
there was a shirt on, but
maybe that was
I figured out what rib the guitar was leaning against, like it is now, and just followed it and taped it there. And then I ran it into a Myland Effects RE150 preamp and just fucking boosted it, you know, and we ran that straight into a DI, and you could hear like my body gurgling, and, you know, there's all this low end detail, and when you mixed it into stuff, it wasn't as obvious anymore. So it was really cool soloed. At the very end of the record, there's this kind of outro. On End Alone, when that stuff's going, that's when it comes in the most, and there's this kind of like warmth to it. That was cool. The thing that was probably the most rewarding was also, well, I'm split between two things. One, there was a stereo head mic behind me where it has ears and there's microphones in the ears. Like Sennheiser makes a really expensive one, but my buddy had kind of a DIY binaural head thing that was kind of above me, and I wanted a portion of this record to sound like you were playing as a listener, you know, because that's my relationship to the guitar. And if I'm capturing that right, that's what it sounds like to me. So that was something that I would be amazed if I ever record again and don't use that technique again. I just really loved that sound. And the other thing that was awesome was when I was mixing it with Zach Weeks up at God City, when we got to certain things on the acoustic, I wanted to explore deeper bass tones that are natural. And one of my favorite sounds is an amplified acoustic guitar, you know, like when you see a show, how big an acoustic guitar can sound off the stage. So we reamped a stereo set of mics from the room at Kawari Sound in Pennsylvania, in the room in Salem, Massachusetts, through a stereo set of Trainer half stacks, super clean and loud. And so one of the loudest captured sounds on that album is the acoustic guitar. The guitar amps were quieter when I did the electric stuff. So that was also a trick that I'm like, well, I will probably do that every time now. You can hear a bit of amp hum in it, and it might kind of sound like tape hiss, but it's actually the amps. Again, at that last part, that's where it's most dramatic.
Cool. I liked how you talked about even the breath, because I recognize it's subtle, but the first intro track right before you you have like a, is that like actually from when you played it, like the room mic or something? Like
it's artifice. I added that. I added that purposely.
I like it.
There's a lot of things on the record where I wanted to find this like explore that like uncanny valley thing of like, it's an acoustic and electronic album. And the some of the tunes, like with strings, it's like the strings are fake, you know, or they're synthesized, but the guitar is real, you know. And these synthesizers are made from, I'm the oldest of a few siblings, and I had each of them send me just a C on their instrument, a flute and viola, and I turned it into a synthesizer.
Oh, cool.
And then I took, I found, it amazed me, about a year before I made the record, I found all the home movies that I thought were lost.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know they existed really, and I had digitized them. And I found long vowels from each of my parents, like an ooh and an ah, car, and turned those into synths too. And that's all in that record.
Wow.
And then like the sounds on with strings, but there's an inhale at the beginning of the record, and at the very end there's an exhale as well. And both of those were intentional, and they're in the Pro Tools file. There is like, all right, let's try a longer one.
Yeah. So yeah.
We shot out,
vibe,
we shot out breaths, but yeah.
That's cool. That's
so
awesome.
good ear. I'm glad you noticed that.
Yes. If I'm sure you would love for your parents to listen to it. Is there any part of the album in particular, if they were here today in person, that you would love to show them most? Yeah,
I think the second half of the album which I think, the first half is kind of purposely written to be immature.
Yeah.
Removed is, there's this term riff salad you hear a lot in like metal, where it's like, the band just went from this to this to this, and there was really no rhyme or reason between them. Removed, I wanted to kind of capture that in a different way, where it's like part after part after part, and there's two outros, and there's, like the song stops and then starts again, all this stuff. The second half, I think, it's written to sound more intentional, sound more like it flows. It's more mature, and I think my mom would really love that last tune. It's kind of dour and it's melancholy, and it's about where she kind of unfortunately had like earned this solitude in her life through mistreatment of folks, but I think she would like that tune. When I was younger and I was learning to play, and it was more single note riff based stuff, she always was like, "Why don't you play chords? Your dad played a lot of chords, so you should try playing more chords." So that tune's the most like, chordy acoustic music.
So, I mean, I could already tell just from surface level things that you briefly shared about it online, as well as just listening to the album, that you have put a lot of thought into it, and we're willing to experiment a lot. Where did all these creative ideas come from?
I think it's the ADD, honestly. Because I was only briefly medicated when I was a kid, and it made me snappy in a way my mom didn't like, and so she just felt like she'd rather me be kind than, focused. Even in that statement, I got lost. But it's sorry. But it's one of those things where that's not how medicine works. It takes time. You try and you work through stuff, and that's just not who my mom was. She was very reactive, and didn't really didn't understand a lot of stuff. So me and my siblings always struggled with like medical oddities. I bought my first pair of glasses. I needed glasses, stuff like that. Where like it was kind of this like, well, nothing could be wrong thing.
You just don't know, like,
that
you're missing something.
And she just like wasn't medically supportive or curious or something. You know what I mean?
Just kind of like a taboo towards like
health in a way, and so I've just learned to live with this like cuckoo clock, scanning radio in my head, and it makes me instantly excited and instantly bored about things. That makes me keep looking for the next thing, and I think that's why the improv works. And so this little music box that is just always going is I've just learned to tune into it rather than get lost from it.
Cool. I like that.
Yeah.
So I get, Andy, I admire your musicianship. I personally love your style, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to interview you and talk about your album and life. I think you do have a distinct voice with your music, and to close, like, I guess, would you have any advice for aspiring artists or maybe specifically musicians for a way to discover that voice?
Yeah, I think it's so important to get lost with your thing and not judge yourself for the quality of the ability. You know, in musicianship, often it's like, how fast can I play?
Yeah.
How clean can I play? These kind of things. You should rather, or one thought, my thought, you should maybe instead look for how it makes you feel. And if it's aligned with yourself morally, you know, are you someone who deals in absolutes? Does your music, you know, does your experience deal in absolutes? For me, there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of simultaneous truths. You know, one way I think about the record, and the music I play as a whole is like, you know, if I think on a timeline, I'm born, there's this. And two of those things might clash. Like, I had a good parent and I had a bad parent.
Yeah.
And it was the same person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the person who made me strong enough to deal with the later version of someone was the person who gave me the first half. You know, it's like someone's own lessons help me deal with them later in life. It's things like that. And when you take a line and you kind of turn it on itself and you're just looking down it, you know, rather than like, this is a blue event, this is a red event, say it's a purple mass. When you look at it long ways and everything is true at once, that I did have a good parent, you know, to be really grateful for. And I did have a kind of a bad parent that I don't miss at times, you know. I that's, for me, my truth, you know. And if I can play that in a way that's sloppy, and there's mistakes on the record, you know, and because I did a lot of it, I wanted it to be one take, and I might have taken like 50 takes of something to get the one take. That's part of that truth. So I would just advise someone to find how they feel, see what that sounds like to them on their instrument. And, you know, for me, major chord sounds more melancholy than just straight up happy, you know? So that's why I play a lot of major stuff, and I understand someone else might hear it and be like, oh, it's like really cheery. But there's just a cloud over me that colors it different, which I'm okay with. And so that, be true to yourself and make it fun, you know, or at least informative, and learn from your heroes, you know, try to, you know, develop, you know, mechanically the good or bad thing. Like, I would say the best thing is to try to develop your ear so that you can at least play what you hear in your head, or, you know, equate those things. 'Cause I can like hum a melody and find it on the instrument. I think that stuff's important, but otherwise, free yourself from comparison. You know, you're not a good or bad musician. You might be more or less competent in X environment, you know, maybe, you know, you're not good enough at X to be a studio musician. You know, my reading, I can read, but it's gotten worse with time, you know, my music reading. But I'm not a bad musician.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, that whole comparison thing. I feel like a lot of people struggle with that, especially nowadays with social media.
Yes.
And
I agree.
I'm still working through that myself, but yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a thing, you see it a lot with young men. There's not a lot of, in America and probably the world at large, but I'm, you know, American. I see so many people who never were given permission to be emotional. Yeah. And never be confident in themselves or something. And so it's very easy for people to look at why other people were praised and aspire to do that thing. So in guitar, and especially with young men, I see a lot of sport in the instrument of like, well, if I could play this, you know, crazy Steve Vai song, this crazy Polyphia tune, and people like them because they can do it, then people like me. And I can be confident about myself because I can do what they can do, and other people say they're good.
Yeah.
So if I'm as good as them, then I'm also worthy. And then, you see these really sad situations where people feel so entitled to, like a record deal or like product, oh, I can't believe this person got a free guitar. I should have a free guitar. I could play way better.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck is that about? It's like, should not be why you're playing. But I understand you want to be confident in something. And, so the comparison thing goes both ways, where like you compare yourself and be like, yeah, I could do that. And that could be good and bad.
Yeah.
That's why I'm always like, just find your truth. And if your truth is like fucking shredding, killer, great, do it, and if your truth is like, you sit on a chord for 20 minutes, like, killer, do it,
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, Andy. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
As, obviously listen to his album Dot. It's on Bandcamp, streaming everywhere, and on his YouTube channel, which I'll have in the link in the description. Do you have anything else that you would like to shout out before we say goodbye?
I'm just really grateful for this. Yeah, thank you for this. I'm grateful to be able to share the music and also where it comes from, because I think it's nice to have art in a vacuum,
mm-hmm.
but for me it's inseparable from where it comes from. And I like reading about that stuff. I like learning about where music comes from, and if an opportunity like this helps give some more context around the record and maybe they enjoy it more, that's a blessing. So
I think so. Thank you. That's awesome.
Thank you. you.